Welcome everybody to today's session in celebration of Neurodiversity Week here at the University of Wolverhampton. This week is about celebrating the strengths and achievements of people with all neurodiverse conditions, including autism, autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, dysgraphia, Tourette syndrome, and probably many others that I've actually forgotten off my list. This week is about challenging stereotypes and societal norms, about breaking down barriers and empowering individuals to embrace their differences. And it's also about enabling all of us to be able to recognize the many advantages that come from seeing, understanding, and experiencing the world differently. We're very delighted today to have both Kelly Scargill and Catherine Littlewood from Sheffield Voices to talk about the work that they do with autistic people and people with learning disabilities, helping them and enabling them to live the lives that they want to live. Just to mention, before we begin this session properly, just to say that there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions at the end of this session. If you could please add them into the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, and we'll read them out at the end of this session. So now, all that remains for me to do as part of my role in this process is to hand over to Kelly and Catherine to begin today's session.
Thank you so much, Julian. Just give me a second while I share my screen. We use slides so we can work on PowerPoints together. So it does take a little bit of clinking to get this up. But yeah, hi, I'm Kelly. I'm the project coordinator for Sheffield Voices. And Catherine, did you want to do an introduction as well?
Yeah, hi, I'm Catherine Littlewood. I manage Sheffield Voices and now our more wider engagement teams at Disability Sheffield. So Sheffield Voices sits under Disability Sheffield, which is a user-led charity. We've got about 22 employees, and we're all disabled people that work there.
Fantastic. So our presentation today is around our work within the community, particularly the learning disability community and the autistic community in Sheffield, and why self-advocacy is everyone's business. And we're going to be talking a little bit about our history, some of the bigger events that we're doing and how we've changed the landscape in Sheffield, and then a little bit about ourselves and our wider team, because like Catherine said, it's a user-led charity, and everyone on our team, it identifies as some kind of neurodiverse or has a learning disability or has a different disability. But we work together in a lot of interesting ways, and we hope we find today interesting. So if I click, oh, I've gone too far, sorry about that. So who are Sheffield Voices? We're a self-advocacy group for adults with learning disabilities and autistic adults in Sheffield. And we run different self-advocacy groups around the city. We do have a core group of around 20 to 25 people who we meet several times a week. That is currently about to expand because Catherine's been doing some work with quite a few day services in a different part of the city, and we're hoping to set up quite a few different hubs around Sheffield, as well as our core group, and being able to move around them there. We also do self-advocacy in different ways through drama, art, creative writing. We try and come up with lots of different ways that people can get involved that's a bit more engaging than sitting at a board meeting or attending a webinar or things like that. So we do things in a lot of different ways to reach different people and different communities and make it fun and engaging for them as well. We host larger community forums, which we're going to be talking more about soon, to discuss different issues affecting our community, as well as lots of different satellite groups. We go around to a lot of different groups that are established and help communities that are known as harder to reach but aren't harder to reach, are actually just there, but we go out to them in their safe spaces instead of expecting them to come to us all of the time as well. So for a bit of a history, Catherine, do you want to take this, because you know Sheffield Voices history a lot more than I do?
Definitely. So Sheffield Voices used to be super Speaking Up for Action, which was an amazing, massive self-advocacy group. Probably about 80 people with learning disabilities in Sheffield that used to come together from the kind of like early mid-90s, and when, you know, some of the institutes shut down, that's when it was formed. And the council, like they've done with lots of groups, took the funding away. and SUFA came to Disability Sheffield and said, would you host us? So we did. So they came with a little bit of money, and we started running a group at Disability Sheffield, and they changed their name to Sheffield Voices. And a lot of people left at that point and went to different day services. Some of the people were quite old and didn't want to come out of their house and were quite happy with their lives. So we had this small group of about 10 people, and we just kind of trotted along. We weren't doing massive things to change things in Sheffield. And then suddenly COVID happened, and it was a really great opportunity for Sheffield Voices to put ourselves on the map and get loads of people with learning disabilities involved. So we had like myself and Andrew Smith, who's a volunteer. We quickly got up and running with technology. We were the only group that were running online services. And we got about 60 people joining our group. So we were just having lots of groups every day. Kelly came to join us as a volunteer. Then we gave her 10 hours a week. Kelly said, yeah, I met Kelly through another project, and I was so impressed with how she worked. I just knew she'd be a brilliant asset on the team. And we were just having so much fun, and we were doing lots of things as well. So we got more and more tablets, more and more laptops, going out in the community with our gloves on and masks on, showing people how to get online. And before we knew it, we'd given out, 40, 50 devices, and people were joining all our groups. And as we were coming out of lockdown, I sort of realised that actually we needed to do things slightly different, that not everybody wanted to have a voice through sitting in a meeting or coming online and talking to us. And actually we needed different ways to help people connect with us. And we got a little bit of money from Mind, and we got some money from the Arts Council, and we set our drama group up. And because that's Kelly's amazing skill as well, drama, she co-facilitated our drama group with an actor from Sheffield. So that was kind of like the start of our, the seed of our using creativity to do things differently. So I'll pass that back to Kelly.
Thank you ever so much, Catherine. And yeah, I just wanted to highlight, so the pictures we've got on screen is some of the older pictures from Sheffield Voices, some of our Zooms during lockdown. I particularly like the Halloween one because we were showing everyone how they could be in different portraits. And that's from our Wednesday night social group, which was set up quite early on in lockdown and still goes to this day. A lot of people with learning disabilities or autistic people find it difficult to get out in the evenings, and having that social group and somewhere they can go once a week without having to worry about care changeovers or anything similar, or transport, which has been a big issue, as you'll see later, has been a massive positive for a lot of people. Oh, sorry, I keep clicking there. So the Big Voices, what we've come to talk to you today, it's an event where we host it 3 times a year now, which seems to be how it's going to work really well going forward, because it allows us to do smaller events in the community in between those big events. In 2022, we worked with Sheffield Council on something called the Chance to Choose project. The working age adults framework was being rewritten for Sheffield, and what they wanted to do is get lots of people's voices whose voice they never usually hear, to talk about what day services they go to, their supported living and respite care. And we heard from 341 adults and young people within the Sheffield area, as well as on top of that, their parents, carers, primary PAs all got involved in this. And we did lots of creative sessions with people. We did art, music, drama. We hired lots of local artists to help us with this. We even had a magician that came on board and someone who did vegetable art. And we found that people really liked doing these kind of consultations, especially because we told them this is where it's going and this is what it's going to turn into. And they've been able to see this project change into the Big Voice project, as well as have it shape something. We've got 2 partnership boards in Sheffield, which are the Learning Disability Partnership Board and the Autistic Partnership Board. Both of those have been through a rehash recently from this project, and with our help. It used to be there was 1 or 2 token members who had a learning disability or who were autistic on the board, and now it's proportional representation. It's at least half of the members have a learning disability or are autistic on both boards, and then the other half is professionals, people of the council, NHS representative there. And yeah, we've done this through creative ways of interacting with everyone as well. Catherine, did you want to add anything to that?
I was just going to say that, like, part of our engagement, the reason that the Big Voice has been so successful, and we have around 100, 120 people come to each event that we hold now every 3 months. And the reason it's been so successful is because we're doing that groundwork in the community. We're going out to projects, we're running things like hate and hate crime workshops to build those relationships. It's not just about us going in and taking from people, you know, tell us about your experience. It's like running these workshops, finding out what people, you know, what people's lives are really like in their communities, and then inviting a number of representatives from each day service or supported living or respite to come to the Big Voice. And because we can't host everybody, because we would have about 1,000 people there, and we just haven't got that room, but we're starting now to get into a really good way of doing things where people are nominated, and that makes them feel good as representatives of that organisation to come and bring everybody's voice into the project. And Kelly always sends out questions and worksheets to give to staff to work with people prior to the actual event so that they understand what they're going to be doing in the event.
Yeah, I've got an example of that in a couple of slides' time. But yeah, like Catherine says, our Big Voice conferences happen every 3 or 4 months. So it's 3 times a year is what we're working towards. So we've just done one in February around the transport issues in Sheffield, a very massive topic, but we had a really, really successful event with lots of people who came to it. The themes and how we approach those themes are like co-produced with our core group, and then what we end up doing on the day comes from all those satellite groups that we go out to. So I design like several questions, which is done in several different ways. So you have the quite basic questions, people who are able to do like a questionnaire. It's done in an easy read format, which I'll talk a bit more about later. But Catherine's come up with quite a few different ways to engage with people who wouldn't be able to answer straight questions. So it's like more asking them on their level and doing things in a creative or artistic way, and then asking questions from that. Are you getting something up to show?
Oh, I was just looking. I was actually trying to find my amazing bus pictures, but the other one, oh, here it is. I have it here. So I was at MenCap the other day, and some of the guys, they just didn't understand what the questions were about transport. So I just thought, you know what, why don't we just get them drawing a bus or whatever their mode of transport they want to talk about, and just get them sticking stickers on, and then, you know, trying to find out why they put a happy face or a sad face. So it just could be as simple as doing these kind of things with people. You know, I suppose we believe that everybody's got a voice, and we try our absolute hardest to listen to those people and try and do things in a way that works for those people. You know, we don't always get it right, but we are trying. And I think just having that presence in the community and going out people aren't used to being asked their opinion. People are just not used to not just being asked, but actually saying this isn't working for me, and then getting the right people in the room to try and make that difference for those people. And, you know, it doesn't always work, Kelly, does it? You know, we've done a massive piece of work around health and GPs, you know, and unfortunately lots of people told us they can't access their GPs. There's a national problem, and, you know, we're not seeing much difference being made in that area, because 1.5 years later people are still having those problems. But I think it's important people are able to tell us these things. We can't change everything. I think we have to be realistic that those things are out of our hands.
Yeah, and like Catherine said, I think one of the best things about working for Sheffield Voices is we don't try and make people fit to however the NHS or the council want them to answer questions. We've got very good at saying, no, sorry, that will not work for this group. You will need to do it this way. But then when we go in, people feel listened to, and we have try and avoid what someone said in that Chance to Choose project, which will stick with me, I think, forever, is that people feel like they're consulted to death and it doesn't go anywhere. So even when we can't change everything, we tell people where we're sending that one to, and we tell them we're not going to let that one up and when we're going to come back to that topic.
Yeah. And can I just add on to that as well, Kelly? But I think for years, the council and the NHS have been having these meetings and going, where are all the people with autism and learning disabilities? You know, we need more voices of people, but yet their meetings were just so inaccessible. You know, they galloped along at 100 miles an hour. The language that people were using was really inaccessible for people, and people that were just coming into meetings and giving their all, you know, you wouldn't hear, they wouldn't be involved in anything for the next 2 months until there was another meeting. And it was almost like tokenistic, wheeling people into these meetings. And we were just not happy about that. And that's something that Kelly's been brilliant at working with the local authority, you know, and the NHS at changing those things. This is all about how we involve everybody on everybody's level, not just working for the council.
Mm-hmm. So I've just got a few more photos, most of these from our last Big Voice event, but some from ones previous, and a quote from, we've just done an evaluation, sending out to people or having them tell us their verbal feedback or write it down on how they find Sheffield Voices as a whole and all the different sections that we do. And we have a lovely quote, which someone said we could use for the Big Voice, which is, I'm proud to be part of the Big Voice event because it's well attended. There are always plenty of games to play and table discussions to get people thinking about what they want in their lives. So what else we do, like Catherine said, we're not just doing these big meetings every 3 months, see you later, we're never going to talk to you again. We make sure that this is an ongoing conversation with our community, that they know they can come to us and feed back to it, and they know that we'll be giving them information in ways they can understand and running sessions in ways they can understand. 2 ways we're focusing on doing this at the moment is we create everything and produce things in Easy Read in-house. A lot of places we insist on things being done in Easy Read, but we also offer that, which we pay staff and experts by experience to make sure it works for them. Just a couple of examples. So the one on the left-hand side is actually part of our report, which I did for the February event. So everyone who attended and everyone who couldn't attend and everyone who had an interest got a report to tell them what happened on the day, tell them the next steps, what we're doing next. If they want us to come to their group, it's kind of like a rolling thing which we want to keep going. And then the second one on the right is things our community has said about transport. So this is the part of the worksheet that we sent out, designed in a way that people can understand with their quotes. So it starts the conversations off in those groups when we send them out or when we go out to them. We're also working on, like previously mentioned, we go to people's communities where people are, instead of expecting everyone to come to us. Those big events aren't suitable for everyone, and some people don't know who we are. So one of those shots is Catherine ran an event at the ISRAC Centre, which is the local Somali community, which supports lots of different people with different disabilities. So that was a pan-disability event, as well as talking to people with learning disabilities in that community, either geographically or part of that community as well. And I also run a LGBTQ centred cafe. It's specifically for neurodiverse individuals, and we address, as well as being a lovely social cafe, we address specific issues affecting that community. We've done a lot of work with Health Watch, who's our local watchdog, specifically around the NHS and healthcare affecting people who are in that intersection specifically quite a lot. Catherine, is there anything else you want to add on this side?
No, I think you've covered everything, Kelly. We just, you know, we're a really small team and we work really, really hard, Kelly and I. I'm physically disabled as well, and I know Kelly has her challenges physically, and we're just really proud of the work we do and how, you know, we've got this amazing group of people with learning disabilities that rock up all the time to help us do all of this. And, you know, we couldn't do it without them. It's just incredible, really. You know, we are concentrating on the BME community. And I feel really fortunate that I just get to go and hang out and eat lots of really nice food. I've just been down to Theatre Deli this morning, because it's not just about going to people, day services, people with learning disabilities and autism are part of the community. It's about inclusion, you know, and like places that give free meals and have community eating events are often the best spaces to connect with people. So we've got a cost of living project that we have been giving money to places, and for us to just go and have a chat with people. We've mapped out all of Sheffield where the cheap food is for people with disabilities that they can go and get. And it's huge, this map. So we go and show everybody the products that we've developed in these events. So yeah, it's just really hard going out and eating all this food all the time.
Thank you. And sorry, we've just had something pop up in the Q&A. Thank you to whoever reminded me to slow down. I get very nervous and end up talking very fast. So I really appreciate the reminder. And if there's anything you want me to repeat at the end, or have a question about something you missed, please do let us know. And thank you. I will try and keep my voice slow. Yeah. So working with a neurodiverse team. So for Neurodiversity Week, as well as talking about our work, we wanted to talk about the team that we work with. So like I mentioned at the very start of this presentation, our staff, our volunteers and our ambassadors, which is our name for our group members who are our core members, who go out to different things on behalf of Sheffield Voices, and the volunteers themselves, but might need a support from staff and volunteers, but they're a Sheffield Voices ambassador. So we are community led and do everything with them. We all identify as some form of neurodiverse or disabled. I think that goes for 99% of all of us, including our volunteer team. We do a lot to try and work with a lot of different people's needs. For example, we're doing stuff like for one of our ambassadors who prefers yellow paper, and they will remind us whenever we forget, but it's very much like making sure that people's needs are met in creative ways. And while it's like a tightrope balance, especially I find it, is never assuming that people can't do things, but listening to people when they say, oh, I'm not sure if something changes, and developing a working relationship where we're working together to make a work environment that works best for them. And we do work flexibly. I'm currently at home. Catherine's also at home, but we work in the office as well as working in the community. And we have a really good way of, if someone really isn't feeling up to being able to do something, we will try and shift things around last minute and make it so it's okay. So I've got a couple of pictures of our team on Zoom and there. And then the thing at the bottom, which is actually launching properly in Autism Awareness Week, but will actually be on Twitter later today, is I've been part of a collective in South Yorkshire, specifically working around my employment plan, which is similar to if you've ever seen a mental health wellness action plan. But it was me as an autistic person in full-time work looking for a plan for me for employment, about what support I need, because my needs vary, my functioning varies, and I wanted to have that down in a very clear way. Going online, not being able to find anything, even though I work in this sector and know the keyword searches to put into Google. And then I approached our local ICB and they said, well, there really isn't one. Should we work together to make one? And it's a piece of work I'm really, really proud of. And I'm hoping it will be used UK wide, if not further. Catherine, I don't know if you wanted to come in on there.
Oh, Kelly, you've just done such an amazing job on that. And that came out of a conversation with Kelly and I. I'm very chaotic. I'm neurodiverse in a different way to Kelly. And I'm really, really chaotic and really messy. And I wing it a lot. So there's so much going on in Sheffield Voices every single day. Things are changing all the time. And because of the nature of the work that we do, and the enormity of the work we do. Sometimes it can be hard, like for me, I forgot, you know, Kelly's autistic. This is what, you know, I need to make sure she knows. If there's changes, that's really difficult. So it's taken me a really long time to kind of get to grips with how, you know, Kelly and I work. We get on really well, we work really well, but we work really differently. We approach things extremely differently. And I took a wellness action plan into our meeting and said, let's fill it in. And Kelly just took one look at it and said, this is just ridiculous. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't work for me as an autistic person. So you got involved, didn't you? And amazingly, you've designed this with a group, and it's just phenomenal. And I can't wait to use it with other staff as well now.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm sure we can talk a lot about different things, and if you have any questions specifically about, say, for Catherine managing an autistic person, or for me being an autistic person in the workplace, because a lot of my work, both with Sheffield Voices and working with several of the universities, which we'll get onto in a minute, is around autism employment and the negative attitudes for what is actually quite an easy workaround. I have a long history of chronic underemployment or not being able to work. And this is the longest job I've ever had, because I am supported, appreciated, valued, and sometimes, like, being autistic is seen as a massive plus. Catherine will not mind me saying that we're doing a bit of a finance rehaul in Disability Sheffield. It's spreadsheets, but I understand spreadsheets. Yeah. It's just, and you're good at this, please take this on. And I feel very valued to have that recognised, as well as other things.
And there's lots of other things, like Kelly's really good in meetings, whereas I find like professional meetings really difficult. It's like being sat in the middle of a ping pong table for me, where somebody says something, then somebody else, I don't know how, I can't work out when it's my turn to talk. I can't follow the conversation because my processing issues are so bad. So by the time I've thought of the answer, the meeting's moved on to talk about something different, and then I speak and then I look really stupid. So then that stops me wanting to even go to a meeting. But Kelly's really good, and we have very different working styles. But what works is that even though I'm the manager, Kelly does quite a lot of the stuff that probably a manager would do, because she's really good at that stuff. And I'm really good at kind of getting messy with the group and, you know, working things out and coming up with these crazy ideas about, let's go and do this. And it kind of works in a way. It always works. But it takes Kelly a little bit of time to go, I'm not sure I understand what you're trying to do.
Yeah, no,
we've got here with that mixture, haven't we, Kelly, of personalities?
Definitely. And I know that a lot of people are seeing us as a force to be reckoned with because of that back and forth. And it's like Sheffield Voices as a whole will have it, even if us individually need that extra support in different areas.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to talk about next is we do quite a lot of work with the University of Sheffield. Currently, we've had 2 longer projects, which I'll briefly talk about. But we've got other things with them. We've done a lot of research, as I've mentioned, about autism and employment. But we also work on a project that's been going for just over 2 years now. It's a 3-year project. It's called Humanising Healthcare. It's enabling people with learning disabilities to take the researcher role with support from us in a healthcare setting. What they're looking at specifically is there's been a couple of clinics in the UK that have been identified as having really good feedback from their clients with learning disabilities, and the people in our team are trying to find out why. What makes a good healthcare practitioner? Why are people rating them so highly? So we've been working with this group to discover what theory is. We've used our drama techniques that we've learned from our other bigger projects to do a role play in a situation that didn't go down well in a clinical setting, and have people say, well, if this happened, that would improve this. And so we're co-producing and co-writing quite a lot of research papers, one which has just been published in Learning Disability Today. and there's several more on the horizon as well. And then Catherine, did you want to talk about the What About Me project as
Yeah,
well?
I'm really passionate about this project because it's a project to research about people with learning disabilities that are on the margins of social care. So we've got a team of researchers that have all got a learning disability themselves, and I've just been like running around Sheffield trying to find people that we can talk to, and it's not easy. It's not an easy task, and you know, a lot of people that have a learning disability and they don't have any like formal support tend not to have phones, they are not digitally included, they don't have any money. So it really is about going into the community and hanging out in places like I was last night at a community eating event, you know, that they have once a week at a church, and just meeting people in these places. It's just fantastic, and hopefully we can help their lives, not just through doing the research to find out and giving them a voucher, but hopefully we can help connect them better with services if they want to be connected, because not everybody does. But you know, just connect them with us, which is a really good thing. So, and I think we were just about to apply for another research project about, which hopefully will tie in all the stuff that we're talking to you about understanding the importance of creativity and self-advocacy, because all the drama, all the art stuff, all the writing that we do, this is what self-advocacy is. This is how we reach people, and it would be really good if we could help other organizations, other local authorities, or you know, other self-advocacy projects to set up what we've set up, and to, you know, to help show them the way, you know, in how we get funded, how we bring money in, and how we look for grant funding to do the things that we do.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm just double checking I haven't there. Yeah, I just wanted to briefly touch on, even though that sounds like a lot, that's also not everything we do. We could probably fill up your entire afternoon with all the random things that we do, but a lot of our community outreach, like Catherine touched on briefly, we do work with places like the police in around Make Crime, again, co-designed workshops in people's own words, in languages they understand, specifically targeted at them and things that they might struggle with, which we run in our community, which then strengthens those bonds. And then when we're coming to them with being like, oh, would you like to take part in this, they know who we are, and we're not a stranger coming into their midst. That we're part of the community, they know what we're there for, and they know they can come to us as well if something comes up. We have really good relationships with several of the day service staff who always feel like they can go, well, several people have told me this actually, can you make sure you do a focus, can you go out and talk to a lot of people? Because in the voluntary sector, people are pushed for time and under-resourced and understaffed, so we're trying to be that stopgap so people can talk together with each other as well. We also provide quite a lot of training. The one I lead on is the Autism Insight training. So it's a 3-hour session speaking about what life is like for an autistic person. We've delivered this to PAs, to professionals. I think my favourite one was when we did it for a theatre who wanted to make sure their venue was more accessible for autistic people. And I was like, you did not need to do that. I've not heard anyone else who's done that, but I'm so impressed. And then the picture which that is from is, was it specialist dental nurses?
These are the dental nurses in Sheffield that came together, and we did learning disability training with them, which was brilliant.
And then we also go to quite a lot of conferences when we have the time around the UK. Several of our members are a part of the Restraints Reduction Network. We're also a member of STOMP, which is stopping the over-medication of people with learning disabilities and autism. We know that happens quite a lot in secure units or from people's doctors, and we'll be making a creative film which has just been cast in our drama group and outside as well. And it's specifically about over-medication. It's been written by several of our group members with that project. And how they want to show that is a subversion. So it's someone who doesn't have a learning disability being over-medicated because things are going wrong in their life. A lot of people in our community get that just because they've got this label. They're labelled as difficult, or it's seen as another barrier in place of getting healthcare. I mean, I've had an email this morning from one of our colleagues in the advocacy team, someone who's autistic, who wanted to access NHS support, was told, please do not let your autism affect your support. And it's an absolutely awful thing to hear. But we want to make sure that if something like that does happen to someone in our community, they can come to us to talk about it. And even if we can't solve everything, like Catherine said earlier, we will send their voice to the people who can and make sure it gets heard. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, just it just always makes me realise when we've put all this out how much work we actually do, and what an amazing group of people that we work with, you know, seeing all these pictures that we never have time to look at.
Yes, I've been just come back off leave yesterday after a week and a half away, and I was like, so it's a completely different job again. That's very cool. But no, it is very fast paced, but I don't think we'd change that for the world. Yeah, so that is the end of our main presentation. I don't know if the guys from Wolverhampton want to come back on to facilitate the Q&A, or how would you like to do that? But thank you for listening. And I'm going to stop sharing as well.
Hi there. Thanks so much, Kelly and Catherine, for your brilliant presentation of it, literally talking about all the work that you're doing in Sheffield. Just looking at some of the questions that come through. There's one from somebody who I actually know, who works for a brilliant organisation based in the West Midlands. And I think they're keen to sort of like connect with you and work with you. I think actually, because I first met you guys at the Positive Voices conference back in September, I think it was, in Birmingham.
You did, Julian. I was there with the Sheffield Voices gang, and we did a similar presentation about what we were doing.
Did I come and speak to you? I can't remember.
I don't know, Julian. I've had a sleep.
I remember it. Apologies now for that. But anyway, yeah, I knew that after hearing you speak, I desperately wanted you to come and speak to us for this event. So yeah, they're a brilliant organisation. So I can see a really, really good partnership coming up there. Another question in the chat is about can we come and go to your Zoom events, and can you share the link?
Absolutely.
Because this is, for those people who don't realise, actually, is like literally there's you know, actual support for particularly adults with autism is like really sort of like it's subject to, I suppose, what you call the postcode lottery, that it's not evenly spread and distributed across the UK. So sometimes you have to go really long distances to actually sort of like be able to connect with groups that can actually help and support you.
So we don't actually run support groups. I just need to be clear about that. Sure. We are a self-advocacy group. So we have a core group of people that come together and they help steer all the work that we do and make decisions about the themes that we're going to work on every month. In Sheffield, we do have some support groups, people with autism. It's not that brilliant. We need more of that stuff. And we've got the Sheffield Autistic Society, so that is not what we do, but we are really happy for anybody who wants to come to our group, who wants to learn about how we do things, if they're wanting to replicate this style of engagement in their communities.
I have put our email address, though, if anyone just looking at the Q&A, if you would like to come as a guest to one of ours to see how we run these kind of Zooms for the autistic community and for the learning disability community in Sheffield. But I also saw there was a question about the employment plan, so that's not out yet. I'm just about to get the Employment is for Everyone Twitter link, because I can't remember it off the top of my head, to keep an eye on there, because I think they're starting the publicity from today about that. But yeah, at any point, if you're wanting to email us, that's an inbox that both me and Catherine monitor. So we'll be, if you have any further questions that don't come today, or if it's about a specific thing that you want sent out.
Amazing. and we apologise by saying, or adults with autism. I'm sorry if that was me. I don't normally use that language. I do know that it is person first and our autistic adults, so apologies if that was me that said that.
And apologies as well as me. I'm very, very clear that I am an autistic adult. I'm very proud of my identity as an autistic person, but I do sometimes get confused between like people with disabilities, and that's sometimes where my own brain sometimes sort of like works against me. But yes, it's a very, 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 very good point. I mean, if nobody else has any questions, I actually do have a few questions, if that's okay. I suppose, obviously, this is a talk about self-advocacy, and within the autistic community, for instance, this is something that is, I know from my own personal experience, is really, really important and really, really valuable in terms of like, being able to connect us together in order to be able to help ourselves. So, obviously as autistic, as autistic people, we're all not copies of each other. We're all individuals with individual strengths and individual, things that we're not quite so good at. But between us, we probably have all the skill sets and knowledge and experience that we all need to collectively help each other. It's just actually having some sort of like framework to enable that. So do you, based on your own sort of like experience, have any sort of like advice on how other groups can establish their own, advocacy network?
Well, I mean, Kelly, you're best placed to answer this because you set up our LGBTQ autistic cafe.
Yeah, so it was identifying there was a gap. It was originally came out of a presentation I did for Pride Month. So I'm a member of the community myself. And then several of our group members were saying that I don't really understand any of this, but also that's me, but I've never really had anyone talk to me about this. I'm going to be talking actually in Sheffield for, it's one of my favorite acronyms, IDA Hobbit, which is International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia and Transphobia, in Sheffield, as well as obviously other communities in that, the LGBTQ community. And I'll be talking specifically about how disabled people, specifically anyone who's autistic or has a learning disability that affects their cognitive function, are assumed to either be asexual, not interested at all, or straight as a default. And giving people that voice was like a passion project for mine. And we have a lot of people who talk to that community because we've got this group set up. I'd say the advice for setting up for things like that is not necessarily coming in and being like, this is how I imagine this group is going to run. Our group all of our groups actually are ran by the people who are involved in it, and we try and have the most open conversations as we can. We will have personality clashes, that will always happen, or we'll have what I'm kind of describing as needs clashes. So it's kind of like trying to make something accessible for everyone will make things inaccessible for some people. And especially if it's being ran by people who have their own access needs, there can be a lot of hurdles with that. But we try and do it as like an open conversation with everyone, where people can say, well, I actually need this. And it's like, okay, well, this person needs that. That kind of goes together. How do we work this out together so everyone feels listened to, that their needs are met and they're heard? And if people are given the chance to have that conversation, because a lot of people are it's just assumed what they need, what they want, how they'd want to do it. It gives that respect and gives people the confidence to speak up the next time. So that's the kind of like culture we're trying to foster. It is not always perfect, and we try and manage that as best as we can. But I think, yeah, having that open conversation, I'd say, is the key to that. I hope I answered the question correctly. I think I got a bit off track there.
I'm just reading through the questions, but I can ask you a question whilst I'm reading through this question. You mentioned, I think, earlier that you actually sort of like pay people to sort of like work within your organization as experts by experience, or you pay for the time. This is something I'm really, really keen to emphasize, because you know, for that most of my life, it's been very rare that autistic people were ever consulted when it came to sort of like literally being part of the decision-making process about things that had a really clear impact on their lives. So it's great now that a lot of healthcare trusts, for instance, like literally have expert by experience groups and invite autistic people to be, you know, actually to, you know, put forward their ideas on how best they can be helped and supported. But I do have an issue with this, because I think you are actually giving your knowledge, you are actually giving your experience, and in most situations I can think of, you would be paid accordingly for doing this. So I'm keen to hear your views on this, and also how, you know, what you actually do by way of doing that, if that makes sense.
Would you want me to answer some of that, Kelly?
Yeah, and then I can.
Okay, so yeah, for a long time we've kind of grappled with this as an organisation that, you know, works with the disability community. We do offer a payment system for people. Obviously, that can be difficult, because if it's ad hoc, Julian, bits of work that's ad hoc can affect benefits. So we do try and help people to sign up to permitted work and help them fill all the forms in and everything. Obviously, for me, I'd prefer to get people on a salary, but we have to have grant funding to be able to do that in Disability Sheffield. Kelly came to us as a volunteer. She started off then working 10 hours a week, and very quickly Kelly was up to 18, 28, and now full-time. I'm not even full-time. Kelly is full-time as a paid worker. I think that unfortunately, as the government has taken loads of money from local authorities, those incentives to bring people in, to consult with them and pay them really well, unfortunately it's become very difficult, hasn't it, for authorities to be able to do that. I'm not sure what the answer is, other than for people to you know, be paid like we do, which is, you know, a set amount of money per hour, help them fill the forms in. We have a couple of people that work for us that we give them a regular wage of a small amount of money every week, just because that helps them be more consistent with the job centre, and we can pull on their help at any time, and they're really happy. So some weeks they don't do anything. In fact, for the last 3 weeks, they've hardly done anything. Other weeks they might work 6 hours, but we still pay them that set amount. So I hope that kind of answers your question. It's a really difficult, muddy area, benefits and employment for people that aren't on a contract.
And we do try and be as accommodating as we can be to whatever people need. And if that changes, we've always been like, okay, well, that's what we're doing for now, but please let us know if that changes, or you'd like to actually pursue that. Because I know we've got one person who we do now pay the regular amount each week and do their involvement form, but for a while they were very hesitant to do that because they didn't want it interfering. So it is trying to work out on an individual basis what is going to suit everyone, and then adapting it when that changes down the line. But yeah, if we can pay people, we will be paying people.
But I do think, Kelly, that the local authority, you know, we need more people working in positions. We only know of 1 or 2 people that work in the commissioning team that have got learning disabilities. We don't know that many people in the local authority that are disabled, that are actually on contracts. I think the health authority is a little bit different, but not massively. And we need to see more of that, don't we? We want more of that.
Any more questions, anyone? I've got loads. I've always got loads, because I'm such a passionate believer of the work that you do. What can I ask? Yeah. Obviously, as an organisation, you specifically help people with autism and learning disabilities. Do you are people, for instance, who are waiting for diagnosis welcome? Because I know that, you know, as a group, people who undergo, particularly adults who are waiting for diagnosis in later life, you know, really sort of like, you know, struggle to be able to connect with people and to be able to learn, you know, about sort of help, not just help and support available, but sort of like actually connect with a sort of like a peer group.
Can I answer this one?
Yeah, sure.
I'm very excited. So we've got in Sheffield a Sheffield Autism Partnership Network set up by Voluntary Action Sheffield. So similar to the board, it's a lot of different people in Sheffield who are interested in the autistic community getting together. They have funded 6 volunteer groups specifically to support people on the adult autism waiting list. We're one of them, especially signposting it to people who might need health advocacy or people who are a part of the LGBTQ community has been advertised. So it's like our email. And we're very keen, especially for this project, to make sure the wording is very clear of if you are on the waiting list, you are welcome, because we know that there is a huge thing like you've touched on there, that people think if they're on a waiting list for something, they can't access the support. Whereas a lot of community groups are like, oh yes, please do come. But if you're not specific about that, it doesn't really help. So I've had it's only been launched for I think a couple of weeks, but I've had quite a few people contact me. So what happens is if they're on that waiting list in Sheffield, they'll be contacted with all of the different organisations who can offer them support now. Quite a few people have contacted me saying, oh, I've seen this, can I hear about it? A few of them have come to one of the virtual cafes to see if it was for them. And even if they decide it's not for them, that's fine. We want people to know that there's support out there, and they can access that, because it's how they self-identify while they're waiting. And also the waiting list is a very scary time. So I was diagnosed at 29 officially. I'm 32 now. I obviously knew for several years before that, but I felt like I couldn't connect to people on there as well. So yeah, massively enthusiastic about that and supporting the people who feel that they are involved here. Because I mean, our self-advocacy groups are listed as people of the learning disability community and autistic people, but we're not a check your diagnosis at the door. If you feel like you belong here, you are more than welcome. It's much more, we want you to know that that's what we'll be discussing, things that affect this community in a way that's accessible to them. But if that suits you, then that's great.
And just to say for everybody here that somebody's put in the chat, they work for, as well as being a student, they work for a mental health charity that has run a training course and has a guide to self-advocacy speaking. And for anyone who's interested in following that up and learning more about that, there is a web address that you can go to, which is safeinourworld.org. So that's safeinourworld, all one word, .org, /symptoms/self-advocacy-speaking. But I imagine if that's too much to remember, just remember safeinourworld.org.
I've posted the link in the chat. Sorry,
right.
I was copying it for myself. So yeah, you should click on it from there.
Definitely. So like that. Thank you, Chloe. That's much more efficient way of doing it than talking about it. Although anybody who's watching this recording on YouTube might actually find that very useful that I did. So it wasn't entirely wasted. I think my final question would be, because I'm aware now that we're coming very, very close to we're almost at the hour limit, but we can always carry on if anybody has any more interesting questions that they want to answer. In fact, some people have, so they will be asked. I'll read out these questions first before I ask my own question. Waiting list support is something we are planning. Oh yes, somebody's mentioned that the organisation they work for in the Black Country, which, if I remember rightly, is Dudley Voices for Choices, but correct me if I'm wrong, is actually putting together a waiting list for people who work. I assume that means for people who are waiting for a diagnosis. Please, if you're the person who wrote that question, please correct me if I'm wrong. And final question is, I run a podcast, shameless plug for my podcast, The Diverse Hub. And we ask all our guests, usually at the end of our podcast, how do we make the boat move faster? Now, obviously, I didn't come up with that question because that's a very neurotypical question. But what I understand that to mean by is that we know what the world looks like today, and we know what the world used to look like. So we have an idea of how things have progressed and got better, even though it doesn't always feel like it has. But that gives us some idea of what the future could look like. So basically, what would a world look like in which autistic people weren't as didn't experience the barriers and challenges they face at the moment, and also people with learning disabilities as well. And based on the work that you do with Sheffield Voices, and your experience of helping and enabling people, what simple things could all of us do to really help sort of like autistic people and people with learning disabilities in the future to live better lives? Whether that's basically as individuals, as communities, as a society, within governance, healthcare, education, basically anything you can think of, really. So that's a very big question, isn't it? But I think it's a big question because it's an important question.
It's a big question, but I've got a small answer,
Yeah.
which is, no, it's quite a few campaign groups have adopted this. I can't remember off the top of my head the originator either, but the nothing about us without us. That is the simplest way to improve people's lives, is to stop making decisions about communities without involving them. Stop doing things to do with people's lives without making sure that that community is happy with you, and not having doors being shut because you're not willing to continuously check in with that community as well.
And I would like to add to that about not making assumptions about people. Kelly and I both have quite big challenges in our lives, but we are a force to be reckoned with. And, people don't often see that when they see us as people, when we go for job interviews, in a sort of neurotypical sort of, ableist world where people just don't see, actually, you've done all these things and you have all these complex barriers that you have to deal with yourself every day. I think that people with disabilities should be celebrated, and people with mental health problems that are in jobs and wanting to work, wanting to be part of the community. That's what needs to change. There needs to be more opportunities for people to live, because once people have jobs, they can live independently, because everything then falls into place. Access to work, all of the things that come with working. It's a big part of people's lives to have employment, and I think that's what's changed your life, hasn't it, Kelly?
Yeah, massively.
And thank you, Julian, for inviting us today.
I'd like to say also as well, to add on to that, it's amazing how all of these things connect together, because I think for a lot of people with disabilities, but I think this is particularly true, or at least it's particularly true in my experience as an autistic person, that the four biggest challenges you face don't actually have anything to do with being autistic. They're all really to do with people's reactions to you and because of your autism. And it tends to be education, employment, housing, and sort of loneliness or social exclusion. And all of those four things are like heavily bound up together. If you don't get the right help and support, during education, it has a massive impact on your employment chances, which then of course actually sort of has an impact on like literally your ability to live an independent life and actually have your own home, which then also filters into sort of like literally being sort of like leaving a sort of like a lonely existence. And anything that we can do to sort of like help combat that is just a welcome sort of like addition into improving the lives and experiences of people with autism, autistic people. Sorry, I almost did it again. People, autistic people and people with learning disabilities. That my mind gets confused, and I apologize for saying that. Just a shout out to somebody who's mentioned in the chat about a wonderful organization based in Swapshire called Autonomy that does that provides help and support for undiagnosed people. You just Google Autonomy Swapshire and you can find their web address. And finally, another question that's just appeared, which is, do you know of any resources for young children struggling with mental health, waiting for counselling or diagnosis?
So our project works with 16 above, and obviously that's quite a big question because we work in Sheffield and we could signpost, we have resources that we could give if that person lives in Sheffield. I don't know across the country. That's a big kind of question, sorry.
I know we have in Sheffield a really good group called the Parent Carer Network, specifically for helping the under 16s, and we used to be over 18s, but we specifically set up a 16 to 25 group. We've gone out to a lot of different groups to find out what that age group needs, because basically everything kind of falls in place when someone's maybe 14, 15, they turn 18 and all of that gets taken away, and people who have extra support needs really find that transitions age difficult because they feel like if they make one decision, that's it for the rest of their lives, and that has been the case in the past, but it's not now. So in the future, we hope to be helping that specific age group more. But yeah, if there's an equivalent to a parent carer forum in your area, I would highly recommend that.
And finally, yes, going back to what somebody said earlier about the autism framework project, I mentioned Dudley Voices for Choices. Correct, I'm correcting myself. It's actually Black Country Healthcare Trust. And it's called the Autism Framework, all age autism framework. So if you just search for all age autism framework, Black Country Healthcare Trust, and it's a project I'm actually involved with myself, and they do run sort of like focus groups to sort of like literally for autistic people and people who care and support sort of like autistic people to sort of like canvass their views on how to provide help and support for people, covering all of the things I just mentioned, so education, employment, housing, and sort of like social exclusion, or enabling people to actually sort of like be part of establish relationships with other people, helpful relationships with other people. And yes, so just search for that online. And if I've missed anything out about that project, please give me a big prompt, and apologies for not doing so earlier. Just to say now, because we have slightly gone over our hour, if there's any final questions, please type now. Just give you a moment or so to do that. And any more? I think we've exhausted all. I think everybody's said. If anybody does have a question that they want to answer, can they contact you to do so?
Yeah, I've popped our email further up in the chat as well.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you, Kelly.
Right.
And thank you, Julian, for inviting us today and to talk about what we do. And if anybody does want to come and just hang out in our, meet us in our Sheffield Voices online group, that would be really good. Kelly and I are always up for having a chat, with other self-advocacy groups, to talk about how we do things.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Everybody.
And thank you especially, Catherine and Kelly, for actually being, your wonderful presentation of answering everybody's questions. David, do you have anything to add?
No, it's been a fascinating thing. I was going to have asked if there are any resources for parents and carers, but obviously that's a different kind of thing. One of my doctoral students is actually looking at the experience of parents of children diagnosed with anxiety. And of course, anxiety brings all its other things, and it's often overlooked. I think one of you preempted me asking that by saying that you're 16 plus. So, but there again, 16 pluses might have children of their own, and it's just something to think about. But I think what you're doing sounds absolutely marvelous.
Thank you. Cerebra is doing some amazing work around institutional parental blame, which I've been involved with, about, you know, particularly parents of children that are autistic, or adults that are autistic themselves, that are, you know, have either neurotypical children or neurodiverse children, about being put into child protection. So if you have a look on the Cerebra website, CEREBRA, there's loads and loads of information. There's a huge group of parents. We've all come together across the UK, and we're working with Professor Luke Clement to lobby the government to change the working together document, and each local authority to stop putting autistic people, autistic families through child protection process, because it's so absolutely harmful. So, you know, there is a huge movement out there of parents that are working together around that subject, if you want to have a look at that.
Cerebra does a lot of good work around all things to do with let's say brain injury and
disability,
diversity and disability. And another of my doctoral students is looking at the experience of parents of children with acquired brain injury, which and working with through Cerebra to get our participants.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.